In a small corner of Seattle, a mother's search for the truth begins with a single, haunting discovery. Her husband's crushed Cadillac, hidden in a junkyard for 16 years. Anna Tran has spent every day of those lost years wondering what happened to David and their daughter Lily, who vanished without a trace during a weekend road trip. Now, with the sudden reappearance of that red Cadillac, a mystery she thought had grown cold comes roaring back to life. As she follows the faint echoes of the past, Anna discovers secrets buried deep in the shadows. Secrets that powerful men will do anything to keep hidden, and with each step closer to the truth, she learns that some ghosts never rest. In this chilling story of love, betrayal, and a mother's unbreakable resolve, Anna must find the courage to confront what really happened all those years ago, because the past isn't done with her yet, and the darkness is waiting. Keep watching to see how Anna's journey unfolds, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping tales of hidden truths and the strength of the human spirit. In the golden haze of a late September afternoon in 1984, the Tran family home in Seattle hummed with the quiet anticipation of a weekend escape. David Tran, a man whose gentle demeanor masked a restless spirit, meticulously loaded the last of the camping gear into the gleaming trunk of his red Cadillac. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, twirled across the driveway, her laughter weaving through the crisp autumn air like the bright threads of her mother's embroidery. Anna Tran stood at the kitchen window, her fingers wrapped around a warm mug of coffee. She watched her husband and daughter with a contentment that reached deep into her bones, her eyes soft with the promise of quiet hours and peaceful nights. Her mother, Mary Vu, sat in a wicker chair by the door, the steady click of her knitting needles like a heartbeat in the background. The house smelled of fresh bread and coffee, the faintest whisper of cinnamon in the air. "You sure you don't want to come with us?" David called, turning with a teasing smile. Anna laughed, shaking her head as she stepped onto the porch. "No, I think Mom and I will enjoy a quiet weekend. Besides, Lily deserves this adventure with her dad." Mary looked up, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Just bring back some of those pine cones Lily loves so much," she said, her voice as warm as the September sun. Lily climbed into the front seat, her tiny hands clutching her favorite blue backpack, a birthday gift from her grandmother, covered in bright patches from their past trips. "Ready for an adventure?" David asked, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Ready!" Lily squealed, her laughter echoing off the old oak tree at the end of the driveway. The Cadillac roared to life, its polished chrome glinting like a promise in the late afternoon light. As David backed out of the driveway, Anna waved, her heart swelling with love and the faintest edge of worry she quickly swallowed down. The car turned the corner, disappearing from view as the sky shifted from gold to dusky rose. Inside, Anna turned back to the kitchen, the empty spaces where David and Lily had stood already feeling too quiet. She pressed her hand to the window, the glass cool beneath her palm, and whispered a silent prayer for their safe journey. The first night passed with an easy quiet. Anna and Mary shared tea and stories, laughter soft as the wind outside. But by the second night, the quiet grew heavy, thick with a silence that pressed in around them like a weight. The phone sat mute and lifeless on the counter, each tick of the clock a reminder of what was missing. When Sunday night fell and still there was no word, Anna's breath came in shallow bursts, her mind racing through every possibility. She called the ranger station, her voice steady but tight. "No record of a David Tran or his daughter," the ranger said, his voice kind but distant. She called motels and diners along their route, each conversation ending in the same hollow way. The worries she'd swallowed down on Friday now threatened to consume her, her fingers gripping the phone so tightly they ached. By dawn on Monday, she knew what she'd been too afraid to say aloud. David and Lily had vanished. The living room was a museum of memories, photographs of birthdays and holidays, David's worn leather boots by the door, Lily's favorite doll still tucked in the corner of the couch. Anna sat on the edge of the sofa, her shoulders rigid, her mother's hand resting softly on her knee. Outside, the world moved on, children laughing on their way to school, cars gliding down the street, the ordinary rhythm of a city that didn't yet know what had been lost. In the quiet of that Monday morning, Anna promised herself one thing. She would not stop searching. No matter how long it took, no matter how far she had to go, she would find them. Because somewhere in the miles of endless roads, in the tangled forest of questions with no answers, there had to be a path back to them. There had to be. The days that followed felt like a blur of questions and quiet tears, each hour folding into the next with the weight of not knowing. Anna filed a missing persons report at the Seattle Police Department, her voice steady as she gave every detail she could remember. The make and model of the Cadillac, the exact shade of Lily's backpack, the little freckle just beneath her daughter's left eye. Detective Daniel Reyes, a man with kind eyes and a serious face, listened carefully, taking notes in a small leather-bound notebook. We'll start with the usual, local motels, gas stations, anyone who might have seen them, he said, his tone gentle but resolute. Anna nodded, her hands twisting in her lap, her heart pounding against her ribs like a caged bird. She left the station with a stack of flyers she would hand out herself, paper shields against the storm of uncertainty. For weeks, she retraced the route David and Lily might have taken, each familiar landmark now a painful echo of absence. She pinned flyers to telephone poles, left them at coffee shops and grocery stores, spoke to anyone who would listen. Some people offered comforting words, others just shook their heads and said they hadn't seen anything. At night, Anna lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the darkness pressed in around her. Mary's gentle breathing from the guest room was the only sound in the house, a quiet lullaby that did nothing to quiet the storm in Anna's mind. She thought of David's laughter, of Lily's bright smile, and wondered where they were, if they were safe, if they were scared. The days stretched into weeks, the weeks into months. With each passing day, the hope that had once burned so brightly began to flicker, but it never went out completely. Anna refused to let it. On the anniversary of their disappearance, she paid for a segment on the local news, her voice calm, but filled with a quiet desperation as she spoke directly into the camera. If anyone has seen my husband or my daughter, please come forward. I just want to bring them home. Her mother's hand rested on her shoulder, the silent strength of generations flowing through that single touch. Outside the window, autumn gave way to winter, snow dusting the city like a shroud. But inside, the small flame of Anna's determination burned on, fierce and unwavering. She became known at the police station, a constant presence with gentle eyes and a spine of steel. Detective Reyes would meet her in the hallway, his expression grave but sympathetic. "No new leads yet," he would say softly, and she would nod, her lips pressed together to keep the tears at bay. In the quiet of her home, Anna turned to memories for solace. She spent hours paging through photo albums, her fingers tracing the smiles frozen in time. She clutched Lily's favorite blue backpack to her chest, inhaling the faint scent of crayons and sunshine that still lingered in the fabric. Each night, she would whisper into the darkness, "I will find you, I promise." And though the world outside moved on, Anna's life narrowed to a single purpose, to find the two people who had once filled her days with laughter and light. She knew she would never stop. Not until she had answers, not until she had them back. 16 years passed like a river in flood, sometimes calm and other times raging, but always carrying Anna forward whether she wanted it to or not. The seasons turned, children grew up and moved away, buildings rose and fell. But in the quiet heart of Anna's home, time stood still. Every autumn, she marked the anniversary of David and Lily's disappearance by lighting a single white candle on the kitchen table, its flickering flame the only light in the darkness. She would sit there for hours, the soft glow reflected in her eyes, her mind wandering back to the last time she saw their smiling faces. Mary, now older and slower in her movements, remained Anna's steadfast companion. She never once suggested that Anna should let go, never once told her to stop searching. Instead, she would hold her daughter's hand and say, "One day, Anna, one day the truth will find you." And Anna believed her. She had to. Then, on an overcast September afternoon, as the weight of another anniversary loomed, the phone rang. Anna's breath caught in her chest, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind in the space of a heartbeat. "Mrs. Tran," a calm voice said on the other end. "This is Officer Daniels with the Seattle Police Department. I'm calling because we've found something. A vehicle in a salvage yard in Tacoma. It might be connected to your husband and daughter." For a moment, Anna couldn't speak. Her hand tightened around the phone, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might drown out his words. "A vehicle?" she whispered finally, her voice barely more than a breath. "Yes, ma'am. A red Cadillac, crushed in the yard. We'd like you to come identify it. The world seemed to tilt around her. She pressed a hand to the counter for support, her knuckles white against the cold marble. Yes, she said, her voice suddenly strong. I'll come. I'll be ready. Mary appeared in the doorway, her eyes sharp despite the years. What is it, Anna? She asked, her voice calm but urgent. Anna took a deep breath, steadying herself. The police. They found a car, in Tacoma. They think it might be David's. Mary's lips parted in a silent prayer, her hands reaching for her daughter's. I'm coming with you, she said firmly, her tone brooking no argument. Together, they waited in tense silence until the patrol car arrived. The drive to Tacoma was a blur of gray skies and the steady drum of rain on the windshield. Anna watched the world pass by in streaks of color and light, her thoughts a chaotic jumble of memories and fears. Beside her, Mary clutched her purse in her lap, her fingers tapping a silent rhythm against the worn leather. At the salvage yard, yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the cold breeze, cordoning off a section of rusted cars and twisted metal. Officer Daniels led them through the maze of wreckage, each step echoing in the hollow silence of the yard. As they approached a small cluster of people, Anna's breath caught in her throat. There, half buried under the weight of years and the crushing jaws of the compactor, was the red Cadillac. Its once gleaming paint was dull and pitted, but Anna knew it instantly. She would have known it anywhere. Her knees buckled slightly, and Mary reached out to steady her. It's his, Anna whispered, her voice raw. It's David's car. Detective Reyes stepped forward, his face grave. Mrs. Tran, is there anything you recognize? Any details that might confirm this is your husband's vehicle? Anna swallowed hard, her eyes scanning the wreckage. Then she saw it, a small dent in the chrome wheel cover, a scar from a careless turn David had made a week before he vanished. She had teased him about it, and he had laughed, promising to fix it as soon as they got back. There, she said, her voice shaking. That dent. He never got around to fixing it. Detective Reyes nodded, his eyes kind but solemn. Thank you, Mrs. Tran. The air was thick with the scent of oil and rust, the metallic tang of old memories. Anna stepped closer to the car, her fingers brushing against the cold, rough metal. She closed her eyes and let the silence wash over her, a moment of stillness in the storm of her thoughts. In that silence, she felt the weight of 16 years, of birthdays missed, of laughter that had gone quiet, of a home that had never truly been whole, and beneath it all, the fragile thread of hope that had never completely frayed. She opened her eyes and looked at Detective Reyes. Where do we go from here? She asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. We keep searching, he said simply. We keep asking questions until we find the answers. And in that moment, Anna knew she would keep searching too, no matter how long it took, because somewhere, in the shifting shadows of the past, her family was waiting to be found. The air in the salvage yard hung heavy with the weight of unspoken stories, the scent of rust and old oil weaving through the cold air like a thread. Anna stood silently, her gaze fixed on the crushed Cadillac, as the police continued their meticulous search. Each click of the camera shutters, each measured step around the wreckage, felt like a heartbeat echoing in her chest. Mary stood beside her, one hand resting gently on her daughter's back, a silent anchor in a world that had suddenly begun to spin again. Detective Reyes spoke softly, explaining that they needed to identify any possible personal items that might have survived the crushing weight of time and machinery. We're also checking for any traces inside the vehicle, he said, his voice calm but edged with the gravity of the moment. It's in rough shape, but every fragment could be a clue. Anna nodded, her eyes never leaving the car. She remembered the way David would carefully wash and wax it every Sunday morning, Lily sitting cross-legged on the lawn, handing him the hose with a giggle. Those moments felt close enough to touch, yet impossibly far away. As the police worked, a man approached from the edge of the scene, his expression a mix of nervousness and concern. He was tall, with dark hair streaked with early gray, and oil-stained hands that spoke of years spent in this place. Mrs. Tran, Detective Reyes said, gesturing to him. This is Ethan Ross, the head technician here. He's the one who found the car this morning and called it in. Ethan's eyes met Anna's, and for a moment, there was something like sadness in them, a flicker of recognition, or perhaps simply the weight of understanding what this discovery meant. I'm sorry, he said, his voice low and rough. I didn't know. When I saw the news report on the missing persons, I just knew I had to call." Anna searched his face for any hint of deception, but found only a weary sincerity. "How did the car end up here?" she asked, her voice calm, almost detached. Ethan shifted his weight, glancing at Detective Reyes before answering. "That's the thing. I don't know," he said. "We have strict logs for every vehicle that comes in, IDs, paperwork. But this one, it's not in our system at all." The words sent a shiver down Anna's spine. "Someone brought it here without any record," she murmured. Ethan nodded, his brow furrowed. "It was just there, parked out back, like it had always been there. I didn't even notice it until this morning." Mary's voice was sharp, her tone cutting through the cold air. "That sounds suspicious." Ethan opened his mouth to reply, but Detective Reyes held up a hand. "We're treating this as a potential lead," he said. "For now, Mr. Ross has been cooperative." Ethan glanced at Anna again, his hands fidgeting with a rag he pulled from his pocket. "I swear, ma'am, I didn't know. If I'd known—" His voice trailed off, leaving only the hollow whistle of the wind through the twisted metal around them. Anna looked past him, her eyes drawn to the maze of crushed cars and rusted frames that stretched out beyond the yellow tape, each one a relic, a story with an ending she couldn't begin to guess. "What happens next?" she asked softly. Detective Reyes turned to her, his expression as steady as the gray sky overhead. "We'll search the yard, every inch of it," he said. "We'll find out how this car got here and who brought it in. If there are any traces, anything at all, we'll find them." Anna nodded, her shoulders straightening as she drew in a deep breath. She had spent 16 years living in the shadow of this question. Now, standing in the cold silence of the salvage yard, she felt that question begin to unravel, thread by fragile thread. And she would follow it, wherever it led. Because somewhere in the echoes of rust and memory, the truth waited, dark and patient, but no longer hidden. As the investigation at the salvage yard deepened, the late afternoon light shifted into a bruised twilight, the sky streaked with fading gold and gathering gray. Anna found herself moving almost mechanically, following the quiet commands of the police officers as they scoured the yard, each creak of the junked metal underfoot like the memory of a distant echo. Mary stayed close, her hand always within reach of Anna's, her presence a steady weight in the shifting shadows of this place. Detective Reyes kept his voice calm, his questions measured, but beneath the polite professionalism was a tension that Anna could feel as clearly as the cold air against her skin. They paused at the edge of the yard, where a narrow path of flattened earth led between two towering walls of crushed cars, their twisted frames casting long, skeletal shadows. "We've been told there's an office here, belonging to Ethan," Reyes said quietly. "It's standard procedure to check for anything that might help us understand how the car came to be here." Anna nodded, her eyes scanning the darkened doorway ahead. The office was a small building, weathered and gray, a single bulb flickering above the door. Ethan had already unlocked it, his expression distant and guarded as he stood aside. "It's just an office," he said, his voice low. "A place for paperwork, a few tools, nothing more." But as Anna stepped inside, a sudden chill swept over her, as though the air itself remembered the secrets kept within these walls. The room smelled faintly of machine oil and stale coffee. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall, their drawers dented and labeled in Ethan's neat hand. A battered desk sat beneath a narrow window, the glass streaked with the fingerprints of countless days. On a shelf above the desk, Anna's eyes caught a flash of bright color, a small blue handbag, half hidden between dusty binders and old manuals. Her breath caught in her throat. It was the same shade of blue as Lily's backpack, the color so vivid it felt like a ghost of her daughter's laughter in the gloom. "What is this?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with something sharp. Ethan glanced over his shoulder, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Oh, that?" he said too casually. "Just an old bag. Belonged to my daughter. She never liked it much." But Anna stepped closer, her fingers reaching for the worn handle. She felt the weight of the years in that simple movement, the memory of Lily's small hands clutching her backpack as they drove away that last morning. "May I?" she asked, though her hand was already curling around the bag. Ethan hesitated, then gave a small shrug. "Sure. It's nothing special." Anna turned the bag over in her hands, her fingers tracing the white trim, the small scuffs that marked it as well-loved. The silence in the room deepened, and for a moment, she could almost hear Lily's voice, bright and clear. "Mommy, look how grown up I look with my own bag." A faint tremor ran through her as she opened the clasp. The bag was empty, its small compartments lined with pale blue fabric worn smooth by time. But inside, there was a white ribbon tag sewn into the lining, faded and nearly blank, as though someone had tried to erase it. Anna's fingers hovered over the tag, her breath shallow. She glanced up at Ethan, who watched her with a gaze that was too still, too unreadable. "Where did you get this?" she asked softly. Ethan's lips twitched in a humorless smile. "Like I said, it was a gift from my daughter, from a friend at school, years ago." Mary, who had been silent until then, stepped forward, her eyes sharp and unblinking. "It's exactly like the one Lily had when she disappeared," she said, her voice firm. Ethan's gaze flicked to her, then back to Anna. "Lots of bags look the same," he said, but the edge in his tone was unmistakable. Anna felt a chill creep up her spine. She closed the bag slowly, her mind racing with the possibilities that pressed in around her like the shadows of the yard outside. "I'd like to keep this," she said finally, her voice calm but unyielding. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Sure," he said, "if it brings you some peace." Anna clutched the bag to her chest as she stepped back into the fading light of the salvage yard. In her hands, it felt like a piece of Lily, a fragile thread connecting the past to the present, the living to the lost. And though the answers still lay hidden in the darkness, Anna knew she was closer now, closer than she had been in 16 long, silent years. The blue handbag weighed on Anna's thoughts like a ghost, its presence a whisper that refused to be silenced. That night, she sat with it in her lap, tracing the worn seams and faded trim under the soft glow of the kitchen light. Mary sat across from her, her knitting needles idle for once, her gaze unwavering. "It can't be a coincidence," Mary said quietly, her voice as steady as the click of her needles in the years before. "It's the same color, the same style, even the same kind of tag." Anna nodded slowly, her mind a tangle of memories and fear. "But he said it was his daughter's," she murmured, more to herself than to her mother. "That it was just a gift from a friend." "Or a lie," Mary countered, her tone firm. "One meant to keep you from asking questions." Anna let the silence stretch between them, the old clock on the wall ticking steadily, each beat a reminder of time lost and stolen. She thought of Lily's laughter, of the way her little girl had danced around the driveway in her bright backpack, so full of life and wonder. "I need to know," she said finally, her voice as soft as the hush of the night outside. "I need to know if this was really hers." The next morning, they drove to a small antique shop on a quiet street in Portland, the sky overcast, the air heavy with the promise of rain. The shop was a cluttered warren of memories, shelves lined with porcelain dolls and weathered books. The scent of old paper and polish thick in the air. An elderly man behind the counter looked up as they entered, his eyes bright with curiosity. "What can I help you with, ladies?" he asked, his voice warm and kind. Anna placed the blue handbag on the counter, her hands lingering on it for a moment before letting go. "I was hoping you could tell me about this," she said. "Its age, its origin, anything you can find." The man adjusted his glasses, his fingers moving with practiced care as he turned the bag over, examining the stitching, the hardware, the faint scuffs that marked it as a relic of another time. "Interesting piece," he murmured. "Early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. The quality of the vinyl, the style of the trim, it's very much of that era." Anna felt her breath catch, hope and dread warring within her. "Do you think it's genuine?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man nodded. "Yes, it's authentic. I've seen others like it before. Part of a limited run by Mattel, if memory serves. Barbie accessories, I believe." Mary's hand closed over Anna's, her grip strong and reassuring. "What about the tag inside?" she pressed. "It's been damaged." The man's brow furrowed as he peered closer, his magnifying glass catching the light. He said softly. "Looks like someone used heat to erase the branding. That's not something that happens naturally. Someone wanted to hide where this came from." Anna swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. "Could you tell who might have done it?" she asked. The man shook his head. "I'm afraid not. But I can tell you this. It was deliberate, and whoever did it wanted to make sure no one could trace it back to its origin. The words hung in the air like smoke, filling the small shop with a quiet tension. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of it all pressing down on her shoulders. She thought of Ethan's too calm smile, of the way he'd watched her when she found the bag. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice tight with emotion. "You've been very helpful." The man smiled kindly, his eyes soft with understanding. "I hope you find the answers you're looking for," he said. Outside, the rain had begun to fall, soft and steady against the pavement. Anna and Mary walked back to the car in silence, the blue handbag clutched tightly to Anna's chest. In the distance, thunder rumbled, a low, rolling growl that felt like a warning. "We need to go to the police," Mary said, her voice low but firm. Anna nodded, her jaw set with determination. "Yes," she said, "we need to tell Detective Reyes everything." Because she knew now, with a certainty that burned in her bones, this bag was no coincidence. It was a thread, a fragile, precious thread, that could lead her back to the truth, and she would follow it, no matter where it led. They drove back to Seattle under a sky thick with storm clouds, the rain turning the highway into a shimmering ribbon of black glass. In the back seat, the blue handbag rested quietly, its presence in the car as weighty as the unspoken fears that pressed down on both women. Anna's hands gripped the wheel until her knuckles turned white, her thoughts a tangle of images and questions that refused to be stilled. Ethan's calm face in the salvage yard, the faint smell of oil that clung to the bag, the tiny dent in the Cadillac's chrome wheel cover that had brought her whole world crashing back into focus. "We're doing the right thing," Mary said from the passenger seat, her voice soft but resolute. "This ends here, Anna. No more secrets." Anna nodded silently, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. She had spent 16 years wandering in the dark, chasing ghosts and whispers, but now she was done with shadows. She would not let this moment slip away. When they arrived at the precinct, Detective Reyes met them at the door, his face drawn and serious. "Mrs. Tran," he said, his voice calm, "we've been expecting you." He led them to a quiet room in the back, the walls lined with framed photographs of the city, images of festivals and parades, of smiling faces that seemed to mock the weight of the silence pressing down around them. Anna placed the handbag carefully on the table, her fingers lingering on the worn blue vinyl. "We found this in Ethan Ross's office," she said quietly. "It matches the one my daughter had when she disappeared." Detective Reyes studied the bag, his brow furrowed. "You're sure it's the same?" Anna took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I know it is. Even the wear on the edges. It's exactly how I remember it," Mary added, her tone gentle but unwavering. The tag inside was erased. Someone wanted to hide where it came from. Reyes nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "This is significant," he said, "and it raises questions we can't ignore." He asked for every detail, where they had found the bag, how Ethan had responded, the strange absence of any record of the Cadillac's arrival at the salvage yard. Anna spoke in measured sentences, the words flowing like a river she had no choice but to cross. "There was something in his eyes," she said softly, remembering the way Ethan had watched her with that careful stillness. "A quiet calculation, like he was waiting for me to find it." Reyes listened carefully, his pen scratching across the page in a slow, deliberate rhythm. When she finished, he closed his notebook and looked up at her. "Thank you," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "This changes the scope of the investigation. We're going to re-examine everything, every lead, every loose end." Anna felt a flicker of relief, but it was fragile, a trembling flame in the darkness. "What happens next?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Reyes's gaze was steady, unflinching. "We find out where that bag came from," he said, "and we find out how it ended up in Ethan's hands." Outside, the storm had begun in earnest, rain lashing against the windows in steady sheets. But inside, for the first time in years, Anna felt a sense of motion, like the slow turning of a wheel that had been stuck in the same rut for far too long. As they left the station, Anna paused for a moment on the steps, the cold rain washing over her face. She tilted her head back, letting it cleanse the dust of old memories, the weight of years spent in silence. Mary stood beside her, her hand warm on Anna's shoulder. "This is only the beginning," Mary said quietly. Anna nodded, her eyes shining with determination. Then let's keep going, she said, because the path ahead might be dark and the road twisted with secrets, but she would walk it, for Lily, for David, for the family that had been stolen from her, and she would not stop until the truth stood in the light. The next morning dawned gray and cold, the remnants of the storm still lingering in the air like a breath half held. Anna woke with a tightness in her chest, a sense that something was shifting beneath her feet, though she couldn't yet see what. The blue handbag sat on the kitchen table, a silent sentinel in the pale morning light. She reached out, running her fingers along the faded seams, remembering the bright laughter of her daughter, the warmth of David's hand on her shoulder. Each memory was a thread she couldn't let go of, no matter how frayed it had become. Mary joined her at the table, her eyes red-rimmed but steady. "You need to rest, Anna," she said softly, her voice gentle. "You've carried this weight for so long." Anna shook her head, her jaw set. "I can rest when I have answers," she said, her voice quiet but unyielding. Together, they packed a small bag and headed back to the salvage yard, their resolve a quiet storm in the chill of the morning. As they pulled up to the chain-link fence, Anna's pulse quickened. She could see Ethan in the distance, his broad shoulders hunched as he spoke with another man, someone taller, with a thick beard and a gaze that flicked to them as they approached. "That's Jason," Mary murmured beside her, her eyes narrowing. "Ethan's friend?" Anna swallowed, her palms damp against the steering wheel. She parked the car and stepped out, her breath clouding in the cold air. Ethan turned to her, his expression carefully neutral. "Morning, Mrs. Tran," he said, his voice polite but edged with something she couldn't name. "Back so soon?" Anna lifted her chin, her voice calm. "I need to speak with you." Jason shifted beside Ethan, his eyes flat and unreadable. "About the bag," Anna continued, her gaze steady. "Where did it really come from?" Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I told you. It was a gift from my daughter. And I told you it belonged to mine," Anna replied evenly. "So which one of us is lying?" The silence that followed was a taut wire, humming with a tension that made Anna's skin crawl. Finally, Ethan shrugged, his hands slipping into his pockets. "You're seeing things that aren't there," he said, his tone casual. "Old memories playing tricks on you." Anna opened her mouth to reply, but before she could, Jason stepped forward. "Look," he said, his voice low. "Maybe you're just confused, but if you're not, if you keep poking around, someone's going to get hurt." The words hung in the air like the metallic tang of blood, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow to that single breath. Anna forced herself to hold his gaze, her voice calm, but shaking with the fury that burned in her chest. "Are you threatening me?" Jason smiled, a cold, thin smile that never reached his eyes. "Just telling you how things are," he said, and with that, he turned and walked away, his boots crunching over gravel, the sound of it like the ticking of a clock in the cold air. Ethan watched him go, his shoulders tense, then turned back to Anna. "You should leave this alone," he said quietly. "For your own good." But Anna shook her head, her voice like steel. "I can't," she said. "Not until I know the truth." She turned and walked back to her car, Mary following close behind. As they drove away, Anna's hands trembled on the wheel. "They're hiding something," she said softly, the words more for herself than for her mother. Mary's hand closed over hers, warm and strong. "Then we'll find out what," she said. But as they rounded the corner and headed back toward the city, the car gave a sudden shudder, a low, grinding groan that made Anna's stomach twist. She pulled over, her breath catching as she pressed the brake pedal, only to feel it sink to the floor with a sickening ease. "What is it?" Mary asked, her voice tight with worry. Anna shook her head, her fingers gripping the wheel. "I don't know," she said, her voice a whisper. She tried the ignition again, but the engine sputtered and died, the silence that followed as heavy as the secrets they carried. Mary looked at her, her eyes dark with understanding. "It's not a coincidence," she said. Anna swallowed hard, her mind racing. "We have to get to the police," she said, her voice fierce. "We have to tell them everything." But as she reached for her phone, a pickup truck pulled to a slow stop beside them, the window rolling down to reveal Ethan's calm, careful smile. "Car trouble?" he asked, his tone as smooth as oil on water. And in that moment, Anna felt the shape of the trap closing around her. the cold certainty that they were no longer just chasing ghosts. They were being hunted by them. Anna felt the air in the car thicken, her breath catching in her throat as she watched Ethan's calm face through the rain-slicked window. She forced her voice steady, her hands locked on the steering wheel. "We're fine," she said coolly. "We've already called for a tow." Ethan's eyes flicked to her mother in the passenger seat, then back to Anna. "I've got tools," he said, his tone pleasant, almost friendly. "Let me take a look." Mary's hand clutched Anna's wrist, a silent plea. Anna forced a smile she didn't feel. "We're fine," she repeated. But Ethan was already out of his truck, his boots crunching on the wet asphalt as he walked around to the hood. He lifted it with a practiced ease, the engine hissing in the cold air. "Looks like a brake line issue," he said after a moment, his voice casual, almost bored. "Not safe to drive like this." Anna's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel Mary's eyes on her, a quiet urgency that mirrored the drum of her pulse. Ethan closed the hood with a soft thud and leaned down to the window. "Why don't you let me give you a ride?" he said, his smile as smooth as the rain. "No need to sit out here in the cold." Anna hesitated, her mind a whirl of possibilities and fears. She thought of the blue handbag in the back seat, of the cold calculation she'd seen in Jason's eyes. She thought of Lily, her sweet face smiling up at her from old photographs, and she felt the weight of 16 years of silence pressing down on her shoulders. She opened her mouth to refuse, but before she could speak, Mary's voice cut through the quiet. "That would be kind of you, Ethan," she said, her tone calm, her face unreadable. Anna turned to her, shock and confusion warring in her eyes, but Mary gave her a small, almost imperceptible shake of the head. "Let's not keep him waiting," she said softly. And with that, they climbed out of the car, the cold rain soaking their coats as they followed Ethan to his pickup. He opened the door with exaggerated politeness, his smile never wavering as they climbed inside. Anna sat in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap, every nerve in her body screaming. Mary sat behind her, her hand resting on her shoulder, a silent promise of strength. "Where to?" Ethan asked as he pulled away from the curb, his voice casual, his eyes fixed on the road. "The police station," Anna said firmly. "We have an appointment with Detective Reyes." Ethan's smile didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly in the rearview mirror. "Of course," he said, "but I know a shortcut. It'll get us there faster." Anna's pulse quickened. She watched the familiar streets fall away, replaced by narrower roads winding through the quiet edges of the city. The rain fell harder now, a steady drumbeat on the roof of the truck. In the back seat, Mary's hand tightened on Anna's shoulder, her silence a warning. Anna forced her voice calm, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. "You're sure this is the right way?" she asked. Ethan's smile was a flash of white in the dim light. "Positive," he said. But as the city fell away behind them and the buildings gave way to dark trees and empty fields, Anna knew with a cold certainty that they were not headed to the police station. "Ethan," she said, her voice a careful whisper, "where are you taking us?" The silence that followed was a living thing, heavy and suffocating. Ethan's fingers tightened on the wheel, his smile fading into something cold and sharp. "Someplace safe," he said softly. "Someplace where no one will find you." Anna's breath caught in her throat, her mind racing. She turned in her seat to look at Mary, her mother's eyes calm and steady, despite the fear that pulsed in the small, tense space between them. "Don't worry," Mary said softly, her voice a thread of steel. "We'll find our way back. Together." Anna nodded, her jaw set, her heart a steady drumbeat of defiance. She would not let this be the end. She would not let the shadows win. And as the dark trees closed in around them, the quiet road stretching out like a scar into the unknown, she knew with a clarity that burned in her bones that this was only the beginning. She would fight. For Lily. For David. For the truth that waited, silent and patient, in the darkness. The forest closed in around them like a cage, the winding road narrowing until it was little more than a single lane cut through the dense trees. The steady patter of rain on the roof of the truck was the only sound in the cold silence, each drop a quiet warning that time was slipping through their fingers. Anna's hands were cold against the cracked vinyl of the seat, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. She kept her eyes on the road ahead, her breath steady despite the fear that coiled in her stomach like a living thing. In the back seat, Mary sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her face calm and watchful, the blue handbag resting against her side like a talisman. Ethan drove with a practiced ease, his hands loose on the wheel, his gaze fixed on the twisting road. "Almost there," he said softly, his voice calm, almost reassuring. But Anna heard the edge in his words, the faint crack in the mask he wore. She turned her head slightly, her voice low and careful. "Where is there, Ethan?" she asked. For a moment he didn't answer. Then he glanced at her, his eyes cold and empty. "Someplace quiet," he said. "Someplace where no one will interrupt us." Anna swallowed hard, her fingers tightening in her lap. She thought of the blue handbag, of Lily's laughter and David's warm smile. She thought of every quiet night spent waiting for the phone to ring, of every dawn that broke without them. "This isn't the way to the police station," she said softly, her voice calm but sharp as glass. Ethan's mouth twitched, a ghost of a smile that never reached his eyes. "No," he said simply. The word fell into the silence like a stone. In the back seat, Mary shifted slightly, her eyes locked on Anna's. "Stay calm," she murmured, her voice a thread of steel. "We've survived worse, Anna. We'll survive this." Anna drew a slow breath, her mind racing. She thought of the antique shop, of the way the shopkeeper's hands had trembled as he examined the handbag. She thought of the cold weight in Ethan's voice when he said no one would find them. "Ethan," she said again, her tone quiet, almost gentle. "You don't have to do this." But he didn't answer. Instead, he turned down a narrow dirt track, the tires crunching over gravel and dead leaves. The forest swallowed them whole, the trees looming tall and dark, their branches heavy with rain. Anna could see a faint light ahead, a small cabin nestled in the shadows. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, the warm glow of firelight flickering through the narrow windows. "Get out," Ethan said, his voice flat, as he brought the truck to a stop. Anna hesitated, her breath catching in her throat. "What is this place?" she asked. Ethan turned to her, his face calm, his eyes cold and empty. "Home," he said simply. "At least, it is now." Mary reached out, her fingers brushing Anna's hand. "We'll go together," she said softly. Anna nodded, her jaw set. She pushed open the door and stepped out into the cold night, the rain soaking her hair, her coat, chilling her to the bone. Ethan led them up the narrow path to the cabin, his boots crunching on the wet earth. The door swung open at his touch, the warm glow of the fire spilling out to meet them. Inside, the room was small and cluttered, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and old memories. Jason stood near the fireplace, his arms crossed over his chest, his eyes flat and unreadable. "You brought them," he said, his voice low and calm. Ethan nodded, his gaze flicking back to Anna and Mary. "They wouldn't stop asking questions," he said. Jason's mouth twitched, a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good," he said softly. "Then they'll be the last to know." Anna stood very still, her breath slow and measured. She could feel Mary's hand on her shoulder, the quiet strength of her presence. "What do you want from us?" Anna asked, her voice calm, her eyes steady. Jason tilted his head, studying her like a predator studies its prey. "The truth," he said. "Or at least, what's left of it." Anna swallowed hard, her mind racing. She thought of Detective Reyes, of the way he had said they would follow every lead. She thought of Lily's bright smile, of the promise she had made to bring her daughter home. "We're not afraid of you," she said softly, her voice low and clear. Jason's smile widened, but his eyes remained cold. "You should be," he said. The firelight flickered in the small room, casting long shadows on the walls. Anna stood very still, the blue handbag clutched in her hands like a lifeline. And in that moment, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would not break. No matter what they did, no matter how dark the night became, she would not break. Because the truth was waiting, and she would bring it back into the light. The fire crackled in the stone hearth, filling the small cabin with a restless warmth that did nothing to ease the cold knot in Anna's chest. Shadows played across the walls, long and flickering, as if the room itself were alive, listening. Jason stood with his back to the flames, his eyes fixed on Anna and Mary, the faint smile on his lips, a knife's edge. Ethan hovered by the door, his face pale, his jaw tight. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Anna drew a breath, her voice calm but sharp as broken glass. "Where is my daughter?" she asked softly, each word a challenge. Jason's smile didn't falter, but his gaze grew colder. "Your daughter?" he echoed, his voice almost amused. "You're still clinging to that, aren't you?" Anna's heart thundered in her chest, but her face remained steady. "She was 8 years old," she said, her voice low. You took my husband, and I will not leave here without the truth." Jason's eyes flickered, a faint crack in the mask. "The truth," he murmured, almost to himself. "Do you even know what that means?" Anna didn't answer. She didn't need to. She could feel Mary's hand on her shoulder, the silent strength of generations standing beside her. Jason stepped closer, the firelight glinting off the dark planes of his face. "You think this is about your family?" he said softly. "But it's not. It never was." Anna's breath caught. "Then what is it about?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the fear that coiled in her stomach. Jason tilted his head, studying her like a puzzle. "It's about power," he said simply. "About what people will do to keep it, about the lies they'll tell to hide it." He paused, his smile growing colder. "Your husband found something he wasn't supposed to find, and your daughter, she was just collateral." The words fell like stones into the quiet room, each one heavier than the last. Anna swallowed hard, her hands tightening around the blue handbag. "What did he find?" she whispered. Jason's smile widened, a glint of triumph in his eyes. "Secrets," he said. "Secrets that would have destroyed everything. So we made sure he couldn't tell anyone." In the silence that followed, the fire crackled and hissed, the only witness to the truth that had waited 16 long years to be spoken. Anna felt her legs go weak, but she refused to let herself fall. "And Lily?" she asked, her voice barely more than a breath. "What about my daughter?" Jason's smile faded, his expression growing hard. "She's gone," he said flatly. "You'll never find her." Anna's breath caught in her throat, her heart shattering in her chest. But even as the tears welled in her eyes, she felt the cold spark of defiance flare bright and fierce. "You're lying," she said, her voice steady. "I saw her bag. I saw the truth in your eyes." Jason's jaw tightened, the smile gone now, replaced by something colder and darker. "You should have stopped looking," he said softly. "You should have let it die." In the corner of the room, Ethan shifted, his face pale. "Jason," he said quietly, his voice tight, "this wasn't part of the plan." Jason turned to him, his eyes flashing. "Plans change," he said, his voice a quiet snarl, "and you're in this as deep as I am." Anna watched them, her mind racing. She thought of the dent in the Cadillac's chrome wheel, the tag in the handbag, the quiet weight of the years. She thought of the promise she had made to Lily, whispered in the dark every night. "I will find you. I will bring you home." "You're wrong," she said softly, her voice steady. "This isn't over." Jason's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something like uncertainty passing through them. But before he could speak, there was a sudden crash outside. A door slammed open, footsteps pounding on the wet earth. Ethan turned, his face going white. "What was that?" he hissed. Jason's head snapped up, his eyes cold and sharp. "Stay here," he ordered, moving to the door. But Anna was already moving, her hand closing around Mary's. "Now!" she whispered fiercely. They ran. The door to the cabin flew open, and they spilled out into the cold night, the rain lashing their faces, the air sharp with the scent of wet earth and fear. Behind them, Jason's voice roared in the darkness, a curse that was lost in the wind. Anna didn't look back. She held the blue handbag tight against her chest, her mother's hand in hers, her breath ragged but steady. The truth waited in the darkness, and she would not stop, not now, not ever. The rain poured down in icy sheets as Anna and Mary fled into the dark forest, the crunch of gravel and wet leaves beneath their feet, a steady, desperate rhythm. Each breath felt like fire in Anna's chest, her heartbeat echoing in her ears as she ran. Mary kept pace beside her, her face pale, but her grip on Anna's hand firm as iron. Behind them, Jason's voice rose in a snarl, his footsteps a violent beat that chased them through the dripping trees. "Anna!" he roared, his voice a promise of violence. "You can't run from this." But Anna didn't look back. She focused on the path ahead, her mind a single burning thought. "I will not let him take this from me." The trees closed in around them, the branches heavy with rain. But Anna saw a faint glow through the darkness, a flicker of light that called to her like a beacon. She pushed harder, her muscles screaming with the effort, her fingers still clenched around the blue handbag. They burst through the tree line into a clearing, the headlights of a police cruiser cutting through the storm like a blade. Detective Reyes stood in the downpour, his hand on his holstered gun, his eyes locking onto Anna with a mixture of relief and fierce determination. "Mrs. Tran!" he shouted, waving them forward. Anna didn't hesitate. She sprinted across the clearing, Mary close behind her, the cold rain plastering her hair to her face, the taste of it bitter on her tongue. Behind them, Jason skidded to a stop at the edge of the trees, his face a mask of fury. "Stop them!" he screamed at Ethan, who had just stumbled out of the woods, his expression pale and haunted. But Ethan hesitated, his eyes darting between Anna and Jason, the crack in his calm finally breaking wide open. "I didn't sign up for this," he said, his voice trembling. "I never wanted this." Jason's eyes went wild. "You're with me, Ethan," he snarled. But Ethan shook his head, his shoulders slumping as he stepped back. "Not anymore," he said softly. Anna reached Detective Reyes just as Jason let out a howl of rage and charged forward. Reyes stepped in front of Anna and Mary, his gun drawn, his voice calm and commanding. "Stop! Hands in the air!" For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Jason skidded to a halt, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists. The rain pounded down around them, the air crackling with tension. Slowly, Jason raised his hands, his eyes never leaving Anna's. "It's over," Reyes said, his voice steady. Jason's smile was a cold slash in the darkness. "Nothing is ever over," he said softly. But he didn't fight as the police closed in, his arms pulled behind his back, the cold snap of handcuffs ringing in the wet night. Anna stood very still, the blue handbag clutched to her chest, the rain washing the sweat and dirt from her skin. She felt Mary's arm slip around her shoulders, warm and solid in the cold. Reyes holstered his gun and turned to her, his expression softening. "Are you all right?" he asked. Anna nodded, though her hands still shook. I'm here," she said softly. "That's all that matters right now." "We'll get you both to safety," Reyes said, "and then we'll make sure you have every answer you've waited for." As the police led Jason and Ethan away, the forest seemed to exhale around them, the darkness pulling back to reveal the battered face of the world. The blue handbag in Anna's arms was soaked through, the white tag inside a faint ghost beneath the lining. She looked at it and saw Lily's bright smile, heard David's quiet laugh. And she knew that this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The truth would come out. The past would be brought into the light. And she would be there to see it. As she and Mary walked back toward the waiting cruiser, Anna lifted her head to the rain. She felt the weight of the years, but also the strength of the promise she had made, to herself, to Lily, to the family she had lost but never stopped loving. "I will find you. I will bring you home." The rain washed away the last of the night's fear, leaving only the quiet certainty of hope. And in that quiet, Anna knew one thing above all else. She was not alone. She never had been. And she never would be again. Thank you for joining us on this gripping journey into the heart of a mystery that refused to stay buried. Anna's story is a testament to the unbreakable bonds of love, the quiet power of hope, and the relentless search for answers that every mother carries in her soul. If you've been moved by this story of determination and truth, don't forget to leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts, your theories, and your own stories of resilience. And be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful tale like this one. Together, we uncover the past, honor the courage it takes to face it, and celebrate the unyielding light that guides us through even the darkest nights. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay strong, stay curious, and keep searching for the truth.